Hello, Jeff again. This is video 2 in our series in regards to Epyx Toolkit Basics. This time we'll look at loading our sprite shapes that we created with the sprite editor in our last video directly into our programs. Let's take a look at what it takes to get that done. I'm going to clear the screen here so we have a place to work. And we'll sort of set the scene by setting our background, and we'll do the sprite load command to load our shapes into the memory of the Commodore. All right, and our shapes are loaded. Let's start working directly with our shapes. We're just going to punch in the commands straight into the computer and let it execute them immediately. We could just as easily create a small program using all the commands that I'm about to show and more. First, we're going to go ahead and define sprite 1. We've got 8 sprites that we can work with here. We'll define the first sprite as multicolor. We'll define that color, and then we'll tell it which one of our shapes that we defined in the editor to set to sprite 1. In this case, we'll set shape 2. Now, in the sprite editor, we saw numbers 0 to 31 were available for our shapes. When we load them here in BASIC, we're going to load them from shape 1 to 32. So what we saw as shape 1 in the editor is actually shape 2, and we'll go ahead and bring that in. Nothing's displayed on the screen yet because we've defined that to be sprite 1. Now we're going to go ahead and turn that on and give it a position on the screen. There we go. So there's our first sprite is defined. It's a multicolor sprite. We've defined it in color 13 as our sprite color. If I want to go up and change that color, I'll go up and change the 13 to say a 14, and we can see that process happen immediately. Well, let's move on. Let's define sprite 2. Sprite 2. This time we'll bring in a high-res shape. That's our shape number 14. We've defined that to sprite 2. Let's give it a color. Now you saw in my first multicolor shape that I actually defined that color on the same line with shape. Some of the sprite commands in the Epyx toolkit allow you to combine commands very easily. Other ones are going to behave a little more problematic. So your mileage is going to vary. With the high-res shape, it's usually, I found it's best to just define the color on a second line. So we define sprite 2 as white. Now let's go ahead and turn it on and give it a position on the screen. And boom, there's our sprite shape 14 brought in white. Let's go ahead and bring in one more sprite. This time we'll bring in sprite 3. We'll bring in a multicolor sprite. This time I'm going to type the name of the color as opposed to a color number and tell it to bring in shape 1. And again, I need to tell it to get the right word here. I need to tell it to turn on that sprite and give it a starting position on the screen. And there we go. So we've got 3 sprites on screen right now that we can position readily. We've defined their colors. We can use the multicolor sprites and the high-res sprites displayed on the same screen. Let's take a look and see what the limitations are to position. I'm going to do that by actually moving this last sprite around the screen a little bit. So we'll change its number to, say, 0,200, and we can see that that put the sprite in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Now, if I increase one of these numbers just a little bit. Let's go 205. We're going to see that sprite starts to hide behind the border, and that could be useful if you need to keep the sprite turned on, but you just need to get it out of the viewer screen for a little bit. You can hide it in the borders. I'm going to show you positions that are on screen. So 0, 200 is the upper left. Let's stay with 0, and we'll change that to, say, 15. That's going to give the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side. Let's go ahead and keep moving around the screen. I'm going to insert here a little bit, and we'll change that to 300, 15. Now we're in the lower right-hand corner. And finally, 300, 200. Puts us just about there in the upper right-hand corner. So those are the areas that are the viewable areas on our screen. Well, this is the basics. Jump off from here and try some of these commands for yourself, and we'll see you in part 3 of this series when we start moving these things around and giving them some life.